All right, I wanted to do a starter kit on Nardcore, and to be specific, this is the first wave of Nardcore. And I interviewed Fester from the Rotters, and the Rotters predate what I'm going to talk about. But what you'll get from that interview when I air it is the Rotters is kind of adjacent. Like they were doing their own thing. They were earlier, they were first, but it didn't really like blossom a scene. The scene comes after. And so that's what this is about, is like basically the beginnings of Nardcore, when it gets coined, the important bands, et cetera, or a handful of the important bands. And so people might be interested in this. I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this have a pretty good understanding of what it is. But if you're a kid out there that just loves Dead Heat and you're like, what's this Nardcore thing they're talking about? Like, what's that all about? I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. And everyone can blow me up on the internet. Brandon Cruz, tell me I don't know shit. You know? I love you, Brandon. Okay. So basically, Nardcore is a mashup of Oxnard and the word hardcore, aka Nardcore. The albums that I'm going to highlight here that you should get into, the first one I'm going to do is Aggression, Don't Be Mistaken. It came out on BYO Records in the year 1983. And the five bands I'm going to talk about are Aggression, Ill Repute, Stalag 13, Dr. No, and RKL. The Aggression LP comes out first, 1983. The same year that the Ill Repute 7-inch Land of No Toilets comes out. But this LP is banging. They play like straightforward Southern California punk rock that Ben would describe as partially being 1.5 and partially being hardcore. So they walk that line, the best of both worlds. The guitar playing is absolutely stellar. Henry is just a wizard. And Mark Higgie's vocals are like perfect punk rock vocals. You know, it's so ill. This album rips. And yeah, they were like the first. They were a little bit older than the other bands that I'm going to talk about. So, Joe, is that how you would describe that?
Yes. By 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Because everyone can check out the Big Bob interview I did. Aggression like starts in like 79, you know? But they do this first record. It comes out in 83. And before that, they did a couple comp tracks on someone got their head kicked in, and then follow up with this LP. And this LP is great. It is getting re-released by Trust Records, hopefully this year, maybe next year. And then it'll pop back up on all the streaming platforms. It's not up there now. The next one I wanted to talk about was Ill Repute, What Happens Next. Now, Ill Repute they do demos in 82. They have the song on the Rodney on the Rock 3 comp that comes out, I believe, in 83, as well as the 7-inch, The Land of No Toilets. But this LP is a masterpiece. You can check it out. It is on Spotify. It is just fast blazing hardcore. Carl's doing the scissor beat, but there's so much here. So it's like you have that blazing fast hardcore. You also have like so much tunefulness, like Jim's bass lines. I don't know. It's hard to describe what stands this out because it's like straightforward blazing hardcore, but then they take like little side roads that make the songwriting so creative. The lyrics are brilliant and positive, like the best of 84 hardcore. It is absolute classic LP. The cover is iconic, drawn by Jaime Hernandez. And yeah, Joe, how would you describe this record?
Perfection. I would describe it as wow, I don't know. I mean, it's everything you said. The recording is fantastic, which is surprising for Mystic. All the instrumentation, you know, like you said, Jim's playing. He layers in all these little noodles. Shout out. Carl's drumming is great. You know, you said scissor beat, and he does that through probably most of the record, but he does have some cool chops here and there, stuff that he does. John's vocals are like super aggressive, and then he turns on this sort of prettiness in his voice at the same time. And then Tony's guitar. is just, a chainsaw.
Yeah, and the tone got way better from the 7-inch.
Oh yeah, way, way, way better.
Yeah. So this is ill. Everyone check it out. Next record I wanted to put out there is Stalag 13 In Control. This came out on Upstart Records in 1984. Stalag 13 has a demo before this. And actually, let me just go back to Ill Repute real quick. I interviewed all 4 of the original members of Ill Repute, so you can check out those interviews for better history than I can provide now, because I didn't take notes. So handle that. And for Stalag 13, I interviewed Ron and I interviewed Blake, so you can listen to those interviews as well. But Stalag 13 In Control is a straight up masterpiece. Upstart Records had the budget. They went in and they spent thousands of dollars in 1984 to record this record. And it sounds like they did. Like somehow, like everything is so clear, but it still has like that old school punk hardcore sound, which we've talked a lot. Like that old punk hardcore sound is like, it's almost the 5th or the 6th person in the band. Like that sonic recording is so crucial. Like it can't be stripped out. Like all these songs, when they get re-recorded, or just anything from the early 80s that gets re-recorded in the 90s or beyond, like it just doesn't sound the same. It's like they lost one of the crucial members of the band, And this record just sounds perfect. You hear everything so clearly, but it's so aggressive yet tuneful. It's out of this world. The singing's great. All the musicianship is great. It's one of the most listenable records of this genre, period, And we should say like Aggression is playing like an earlier like 80s California punk style, like similar. Like if you wanted to compare them to like the Adolescents or something, I wouldn't be mad at you. Ill Repute is playing like a blazing fast style where they're not shy about going to the scissor beat. So they're like going full on speed on a lot of the songs. Stalag is like doing heavy DC influence. So that's like more of their lane. And this record is just great. Again, cover drawn by Jaime Hernandez, completely iconic with those Hulk Hogan red and yellow, like it just pops off the cover there. And Joe, you have a take on this one?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Casillas's guitar playing is just, his shredding little licks here and there. Harry's drumming is fantastic. Ron's vocals are iconic, and the lyrics probably more than anybody else, are I would say more relatable to the masses than anything else. With songs like Black and Gray, the other bands don't really touch on that sort of direct feeling, except maybe Book and Its cover, but from Ill Repute. But yeah, it's good. It's wonderful. Get it.
It's like the surface of a lake, and everyone can get it. It is re-released by Dr. Strange, so it's in print. You can find this anywhere. Actually, not Dr. Strange anymore. I think it's Puke and Vomit. But anyway, it's out there. It's on the streaming. We'll link it up here. The next one I wanted to talk about was Dr. No Plug-in Jesus. Came out in 1984. The original on Getaway Records, which is like a side thing of Mystic. I'll tell the patrons the rumor of why it's on Getaway and not on Mystic. Remind me, and I'll tell you. I don't want to insult anyone on this on the main feed. So this record is obviously highly influential. all these dudes, like the old school Nardcore guys, if you talk to them, like listening to Discharge was like very influential to them. And Dr. No is the one that puts that sound down to wax the most of like the big four. This is very Discharge-y, D-beat style, but Kyle has such a unique voice that sits on the top of it and isn't like gonna just sing about like politics. He sings about wild stuff. Like it's kind of like a lot of heavy metal type lyrics on the top of like raging fast D-beat hardcore. It is so rad. Most people have heard this. This might be the record that broke out and was like the most famous of all these, possibly. Maybe that's controversial to say, But like, because Dr. No crossed over into heavy metal, maybe they have a little bit wider of a swath of people that are familiar with them. But this record is absolutely amazing. Joe, do you think that that's fair to say or no?
That's hard to say. I would say Ill Repute carried the most, but that's hard to say. But the record is fantastic. Two guitars, Fred and Kyle. Rick Heller's drumming is so incredibly unique. Ismail's bass is fantastic. As you said, Kyle's vocals are they're very strange for punk rock. Because he has that almost squeal to his voice, but not like not a bad squeal. I'm messing that up on describing that.
No, actually, I think that you're describing it really well. Like, it's kind of like if he was a heavy metal singer, he would be doing the squeal, but he actually like has a way of holding back his voice so that it doesn't go there.
Right.
So, like, he's using like that's a technique he's doing, but his voice is so rad he can hold it back that it doesn't sound like that really niche, like heavy metal scream. It makes it so unique and cool. I mean, this guy's a fucking genius. So, and for everyone, I've interviewed Ismail for this pod, so you can check that out. And we will get Kyle at some point. It's one of the ones we got to get. The last one I wanted to talk of, obviously, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. It'd be very easy to just listen to the Nardcore comp and get a good taste of all this stuff. I mean, really, if you didn't want to listen to 5 and you just want to listen to 1, you can just listen to the Nardcore comp. But I don't think it's on Spotify. So that's why I'm breaking this out. Plus, it gives the bands a little bit more glory. The next one I wanted to talk about. So Aggression came out in 83. Stalag, The Repute, Dr. No all come out in 84. I want to talk about RKL, comes out in 1985. The LP Keep Laughing on Mystic Records. Their 7-inch comes out in 84, but this LP, again, just another iconic record that influenced so much. The cover art done by Dan Seitz is iconic, and these guys are just shredders. Check out the interview I did with Chris Rest, and he goes into all this stuff, but these guys are just like young kids that know how to shred, they know how to write songs, and they just knock it out of the park. And they go on to influence what would be some of the biggest bands, in punk still, like Lagwagon, NoFX, that realized like, oh, we got to get our chops up because we got to be able to hang with RKO, I mean, straight up, like we've talked about before on the pod, like NoFX is straight up a mashup of RKL plus Bad Religion Suffer, and NoFX is one of the biggest bands in punk rock in the history of the music. Joe, do you think I described this well enough, or do you want to color it out a bit?
No, you did really well. The guitar playing stands out from all of the other bands. I'm not saying it's better; it's just more technical, and I think that's what you were trying to allude to. It's not just the guitar playing; it's the whole band. But you hear the guitar more prominent than anything else, unfortunately, because you don't hear the bass very well on this recording. Thanks, Mystic. But
it's so hard to hear the kick drum.
Yeah, and you can't hear the kick drum and stuff like that. So you miss a lot on what Bomber's doing on drums, and I can't remember who played bass on this one. It's before Joe. So anyway, there's so much energy trapped in this record. So get it.
Yeah. So that's my 5. So if you were curious about where Nardcore came from, I would say that is where you should start. That is my starter kit. And Ben and Dan, how do you feel about that?
Which one do you want to talk first?
Well, Ben, let's go to you. What's up?
I think of when I think of Nardcore, I think of the big 4, kind of like thrash metal has a big 4. And for Nardcore, I think of Aggression, Ill Repute, Stalag 13, and Dr. No. So you got all of those. And the only reason I don't think of it as a big 5 with RKL is technically they're from Montecito, Santa Barbara. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They totally belong on this list. I think your list is perfect, and it's identical to the list I would have come up with myself. I wouldn't have known which Dr. No record to pick, but they would have been on the list. So this is a pretty cut and dry one. Like, okay, let's say you were nitpicky and you decided RKL's from Santa Barbara. Let's pick another band actually from Oxnard. Who would you pick? Like Rat Pack or False Confessions, right?
Yeah, the False Confession 7-inch for sure.
Yeah, but RKL is like as good as any other band on this list. Like they're so good. Like I agree with you to make an exception and have them on this list. So I have no. I have my own, personal taste, which is that Aggression is the best thing here, and RKL is just below that. Although talent wise, probably number one or tied with Aggression. But that's just my personal taste. These are the 5 bands that belong on this list for sure.
Dan, what's your take?
Well, I mean, this is as obvious as it gets, I think. And I mean, who better for it to come from than you two? For anyone listening out there, I mean, Joe steeped in this scene forever. Zach has passion for this scene. What?
You, Jack.
No, I was going to say Zach has passion for this scene, unlike pretty much anyone I've ever known. The reason that we are speaking on this pod right now is to commemorate and educate about this scene. So take heed on this starter kit. It is right. But I am not letting either of you off the hook right now. If you had to pick the one record out of the 5, what is the one?
Oh, Joe, you can go first.
Oh God. It's gonna be the one on Mystic.
No, Joe, you're not getting out of it.
The nostalgia or Aggression. He's narrowed it down to 3. You got to roll with it. Okay, now you've narrowed it down to 3, Joe. Now you got to narrow it to 1.
I'm gonna say What Happens Next.
Yeah,
it's the closest to my heart. However, Don't Be Mistaken is probably. Oh man, see that's so tough. It's those two. If it's one, it's What Happens Next. It'll repeat What Happens Next.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I can't live in a world without Book in its cover. I love all these albums dearly. I can't imagine living in a world without Black and Gray or Conditioned. I can't imagine living in a world without the Full Aggression record, to be honest with you. Like, what's a world without Dear John Letter? Good God. Even though that was a bonus track. That was actually on the comp. But dude, Book in its cover.
My favorite's the Stalag LP out of them all.
Yeah, I think that like for someone that is not familiar but like let's say you like Minor Threat, you like 7 Seconds, Stalag is probably like the one to listen to.
Yeah, it speaks to me the most. But I mean not taking anything away from the other records, they're all fantastic. But the Stalag is the one that I like, and I like the artwork the best on that one too. I think that middle picture of his back against the wall while like shredding with like legs akimbo, that is just such a unique like way to capture something. I don't know, it's so cool.
It's so good. Like, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love going there, right? Like kind of like 84, I think of, a lot of black and white album covers. And here you are like blazing red and yellow, and I joke about like the Hulk Hogan colors, but actually, Hulk Hogan was wearing a bunch of different stuff in this period. It wasn't like until a couple years later that he was always wearing red and yellow.
Well, it's an advertising thing. That's why McDonald's is red and yellow. Like those are the two colors that will pull your eye. If you're looking at a bunch of different things and you see those two colors together, your eyes are pulled there. So I think this was in a psychology course I took, and one of the things is red is the color of blood and danger and all of that. And so your eyes are just automatically like aware every time you see it. But then there's something about the yellow that it's like pigmentation just naturally pulls your eyes. So when you put the two together, that's why you'll find tons of things in the advertising world that are red and yellow.
So it's the reverse of the Adolescence LP, which is designed to fuck with your eyes. Like those colors are like, don't go together.
Exactly. The contrasting, like discordant music does, you know?
Which is interesting because the RKL LP is actually blue and red as well.
Ah.
So how about that for a tie-in?
Yeah. Oh, I have an anecdote. After we interviewed Lisa, I think the very night we interviewed Lisa Fancher from Frontier Records, go back and listen to that interview. I said we were texting each other and talking about like what records.
Did she say who dis?
She said who new phone who dis, and she goes, what record? I was asking her like what records did you reject, or I think she maybe mentioned that in the interview itself. And I said, you know what? I always thought this was a very frontiery record, and I played her. I sent her maybe Rat Race off of the Aggression Don't Be Mistaken LP. It was something off of one of the more mid-tempo songs off Don't Be Mistaken, which had, I guess, gone under her radar at the time. And she goes,
Rat Race.
She goes, this is actually really good. And I'm like, yeah, it's like it could have been, you could have put this out. It's very frontiery.
Yeah, but she's out by then, right? Like she actually like comes back in to do a Suicidal record.
As far as like hardcore punk type stuff, yes, correct. Suicidal's 83.
Right. All right. Well, that is that. And everyone, you got to order the Dead Heat LP. Handle business. Nardcore is still alive and well. And Joe, Out of Trust, still recording, but Out of Trust record. Out of Trust record later this year or next year. So things are still popping. And you know that Retaliate came out in December 2020. Ooh. So handle business. IndecisionRecords.com.
And Nardcore for Life.
That's right. But everyone get the Nardcore for Life comp. We put that out last year too. Or Dave put it out. We helped. But this thing is still alive. That is the first wave. And we can always talk another one. So what's up with that? Thank you for listening. I think that is everything. Huh?
Shout out Bailey.